The gunshot cracked through the Arizona twilight like a whip splitting dry leather. Samuel Cole reined his horse hard, dust swirling beneath iron-shod hooves. His hand dropped to the Colt peacemaker at his hip before his mind caught up with his instincts. 13 years since Gettysburg, and the reflexes of war still lived in his bones like unwelcome tenants who refused to leave. Another shot, then a scream, a woman's scream. He kicked his mare into a gallop, riding toward the sound. The red canyon walls rose around him like ancient sentinels, their shadows stretching long across the scrubland as the sun bled out on the western horizon. Samuel was 45 years old, built like rawhide stretched over oak, with gray threading through his dark hair and a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. A gift from a Confederate bayonet at Chancellorsville, a reminder that death came fast for men who hesitated. He crested a ridge and saw them below. Two men on horseback, circling a young woman on foot like wolves closing on a wounded deer. She moved like water between the rocks, dodging, weaving, but they were closing in. One of the men raised his pistol, taking aim at her back. Samuel didn't think. He drew and fired in one fluid motion. The first rider pitched backward off his saddle, a red bloom spreading across his chest. Dead before he hit the ground. The second man wheeled around, eyes wide with shock, then spurred his horse and fled into the gathering darkness like the coward he was. Samuel rode down the slope at a careful pace, keeping his colt level until he was certain the fallen man wouldn't rise again. He dismounted and approached the woman, boots crunching on the gravelly soil. She was young, early 20s maybe, Apache judging by her braided hair threaded with turquoise beads and the intricate pattern of her worn cotton dress. Her dark eyes watched him with a mixture of fear and something else. Calculation, intelligence, the look of someone who had learned to survive by reading the intentions of strangers. "You hurt?" Samuel asked, holstering his weapon. She shook her head slowly, still watching him like a hawk watches a snake. "Those men, they ride with anyone I should know about?" "Cattle thieves," she said. Her English was clear, touched with the rhythm of her people. "They have been raiding Apache settlements for weeks. Tonight they wanted more than cattle." Samuel understood. He'd seen what men like that did to women when there was no law to stop them. He glanced at the body in the dust, feeling no remorse. "You got somewhere safe to go?" She nodded toward the northern hills where the last light was fading to purple. "My people. 20 miles. Long walk in the dark. Dangerous, too. I have walked longer, and I have survived worse." She turned and began moving toward the ridge with the fluid grace of someone born to this harsh land. Then she paused, looking back over her shoulder. The dying light caught her face, and Samuel saw something there that surprised him. Gratitude, yes, but also a fierce pride that refused to bend. "Thank you," she said. "I am called Kaya. Among my people, we do not forget those who save our lives. I will remember this debt." Before Samuel could respond, she vanished into the shadows like smoke dissolving into air. He stood there for a long moment, listening to the wind whisper through the canyon, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. Then he mounted his horse and rode home, pushing the encounter from his mind. In the West, you saved who you could and buried who you couldn't. That was the only arithmetic that mattered. 1 week later, Samuel Cole's heart stopped beating. It happened without warning. In the middle of a morning meeting with 30 ranch hands gathered near the main barn. He was discussing the drought that had gripped the territory for 3 months, the falling water table, the urgent need to move the herd to the eastern pastures where the grass still held some green. Mid-sentence, a fist of fire closed around his chest. The words died in his throat. The world tilted sideways, colors bleeding into gray. He reached for something to steady himself, found only air. Then he was falling, and the red Arizona dirt rushed up to meet him, like an old enemy. Chaos erupted around his crumpled body. Men shouted. Boots scrambled backward. Not one of them moved toward their fallen boss. Fear rooted them in place like fence posts. Fear of doing the wrong thing. Fear of responsibility. Fear of watching the most powerful man in the valley die at their feet. Harlan Wade pushed through the crowd, his lean face sharp with barely concealed anticipation. He was Samuel's foreman, 8 years on the ranch, a man with cold blue eyes and a Confederate cavalry saber scar across his forearm. He'd fought for the South at Shiloh and Antietam. He'd watched his brothers die in Union prison camps. And he'd never forgiven Samuel Cole for treating Mexicans and Indians like they deserved the same wages and respect as white men. Harlan looked down at Samuel's still form, at the blue tinge spreading across his lips, and something dark flickered behind his eyes. Opportunity. "Stand back," he ordered, his voice carrying the authority he'd been waiting years to claim. "Give the boss air. Someone ride for the doctor in town." But no one moved to help Samuel. No one knew how. None of them noticed the young Apache woman running from the horse barn, her bare feet flying across the packed earth. Kaya dropped to her knees beside Samuel, pressing her ear to his chest. Silence. His heart had stopped. She could feel the absence of life like a cold wind blowing through an empty house. She had been watching the ranch for 7 days, sleeping in the hayloft, waiting for a chance to repay her debt. Her grandmother had taught her that an unpaid debt was a chain around the soul. Now that chance had arrived in the worst possible form. Her hands found his sternum. She began pressing down, hard and rhythmic, the way her grandmother, the tribe's healer, had taught her since she was a child. The old medicine, the way to call a wandering spirit back from the banks of the dark river. "What the hell is she doing?" someone shouted. "Get that Apache off him. She's killing him." Kaya ignored them. She breathed into Samuel's mouth, then pressed again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe. Press. Breathe. Press. A shadow fell over her, blocking the morning sun. Then pain exploded across her back like lightning striking a tree. Harlan's rifle butt slammed into her spine with the full force of his hatred, driving her forward into the dust. Fire raced through her ribs, her vision blurred with tears of agony. "Don't you touch him," Harlan snarled, raising the rifle for another blow. "Filthy savage. What kind of witchcraft are you trying?" Kaya couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world had narrowed to a tunnel of pain and desperation. But her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind, steady as a drumbeat. "The dying do not wait for the living to feel ready. Save him. Save him now." She crawled forward, gasping, dragging herself through the dirt, and placed her trembling hands on Samuel's chest again. Press, press, press. "Stop her! Someone stop her!" Press, press, press. Harlan raised his rifle butt again, and then Samuel Cole's body jerked beneath her palms. His chest rose, fell, rose again. A ragged breath tore from his throat, then another. His eyelids fluttered, showing only the whites, but he was breathing. He was alive. The crowd fell silent, struck dumb by what they had witnessed. Kaya slumped backward, the pain in her back roaring through her body like wildfire consuming dry timber. She had done it. She had repaid her debt. The chain around her soul was broken. But Harlan Wade was already moving, his face twisted with fury and something else. Fear. Fear that his opportunity was slipping away. He grabbed Kaya by the arm, hauling her upright with brutal force. His grip was iron. His breath was hot against her face. "Get this Indian witch off my ranch," he announced to the crowd, "and spread the word in town. She attacked Mr. Cole while he was unconscious. Tried to do something unnatural to him." "That is a lie," Kaya whispered through cracked lips. Harlan backhanded her across the face, snapping her head sideways. Liars don't get to speak, especially not Apache liars. By sundown, Kaya was gone, driven from the ranch with nothing but the clothes on her back, a bruise spreading like a purple sunset across her spine, and the taste of blood in her mouth. By midnight, Harlan Wade had composed a telegram to a man named Corbett, leader of a cattle-rustling gang that operated along the Mexican border. The message was simple. The old man is down. Time to move. Bring your men. Samuel Cole woke on the third day to the sound of wind rattling the shutters. His chest ached like someone had used it for a blacksmith's anvil. His throat was dry as desert sand, but his mind was sharp, and his instincts were screaming warnings that his body was too weak to answer. Something was very wrong. The room was too quiet. The air carried the faint, acrid smell of smoke that didn't belong. And when he asked the attending doctor who had saved his life, the man's eyes slid away like water off oiled leather. Your men handled it, Mr. Cole. They got you inside, kept you comfortable until I arrived. Which man? I want to thank him personally. I couldn't say for certain. It was chaotic, you understand. Samuel had been a scout during the war, spending 4 years behind enemy lines reading lies on men's faces, tracking deception like other men track deer. This doctor was lying, badly. He waited until nightfall, then rose from his bed despite the protests of his battered body. In every step sent pain radiating through his ribs. But Samuel Cole had marched 30 miles on a shattered ankle after Chancellorsville. He could damn well walk across his own ranch. The main yard was dark and quiet, too quiet for a working ranch at this hour. He made his way to the barn where the incident had occurred, moving through shadows, staying low. On the ground near the water trough, half buried in dust, he found something that stopped him cold. A scrap of fabric, turquoise thread, Apache beadwork. The woman from the canyon. Kaya. She had been here. Samuel's jaw tightened until his teeth ached. He found old Miguel hiding in the back of the bunkhouse. The 70-year-old Mexican who had worked this ranch since Samuel's father first drove stakes into the Arizona soil. Miguel was the only man on the property Samuel trusted completely. The old vaquero had never lied to him, not once in 40 years. Tell me everything, Samuel said, closing the door behind him. The truth, all of it. Miguel's weathered face crumpled like paper in a fire. Senor, they will kill me if I speak. Harlan has men watching, new men, bad men. They'll answer to me if you stay silent. I need to know what happened. The old man crossed himself 3 times, lips moving in silent prayer. Then he talked. He told Samuel about the Apache girl who appeared from nowhere and knelt over his dying body when no one else would move. About the way she pressed on his chest and breathed life back into his lungs. About Harlan's rifle butt crashing into her back with enough force to crack bone. About the lies that followed, the accusations of witchcraft and assault, the way she'd been driven into the wilderness like a rabid animal. And then Miguel told him the rest. In the 3 days Samuel had been unconscious, 200 head of cattle had vanished from the south pasture. Harlan claimed they'd wandered off during a storm, but there hadn't been any storm. The foreman had also hired 6 new hands, hard-eyed strangers who wore their guns low and loose, like men who'd killed before and were eager to do it again. There is more, senor, Miguel whispered, glancing at the door. Yesterday, I was cleaning the office. I found this hidden behind the desk. He produced a wax cylinder, the kind used for phonograph recordings. Samuel took it to his study, locked the door, and placed the cylinder on the machine. He turned the crank with trembling fingers. Static crackled, then voices, panicked shouting, the thud of boots on packed earth, and then, cutting through the chaos, a woman's voice, desperate but steady. Come on, breathe, please breathe, you stubborn man. The crack of wood striking flesh, a cry of pain, and then Harlan's voice, cold and clear. Don't let that Apache witch touch him. Get her off. Get her off now. Samuel listened to the recording 3 times. Each time his expression grew harder, colder, until his face might have been carved from the same red stone as the canyon walls. Harlan Wade had beaten the woman who saved his life, then driven her out to die, then started stealing his cattle and planning God knew what else. Samuel walked to the gun cabinet in his office. He loaded his Colt Peacemaker with fresh cartridges, 18 rounds in his gun belt. He took down the Winchester repeating rifle from the wall, checked the action, filled a leather pouch with 12 more shells. He packed a saddlebag with bandages, carbolic acid, laudanum, and clean cloth. Finally, he strapped his father's Bowie knife to his boot. Then he saddled his fastest horse and rode north into the darkness, following the stars toward Apache territory. The settlement was a cluster of weathered shacks and hide tents nestled against the base of a sandstone cliff. Cook fires flickered in the pre-dawn gloom. Dogs barked warnings at his approach. Samuel rode in slowly, hands visible and empty, making no sudden movements. An old woman emerged from the largest dwelling, her face carved with deep lines of age and hardship, her eyes sharp as obsidian blades. "I am looking for a woman called Kaya," Samuel said in a clear voice. "I mean her no harm. She saved my life. I have come to repay that debt." The old woman's expression didn't soften. "White men always speak of debts. They rarely pay them. I'm not most white men." Something shifted in her ancient gaze. Recognition, perhaps, or the faint ghost of hope. She pointed a gnarled finger toward the edge of the settlement, where a small shack leaned against the cliff face like a wounded animal seeking shelter. "She is dying," the woman said flatly. "The blow to her back has turned to poison in her blood. We have done what we can. It is not enough." Samuel's chest tightened like a fist closing around his heart. He dismounted and walked to the shack. The door hung from a single rusted hinge. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of fever, infection, and approaching death. Kaya lay on a straw pallet, her face pale as bone and slick with sweat. Her breathing was shallow, rapid, wrong. A young girl, maybe 12 years old, knelt beside her, pressing a damp cloth to her forehead, with hands that trembled with exhaustion and fear. The girl's eyes widened when she saw Samuel fill the doorway. "Please," she whispered, "please do not hurt her. She only wanted to help." "I know." Samuel knelt beside Kaya, his knees cracking against the hard-packed floor. "I know what she did for me, and I know what was done to her because of it." He opened his saddlebag and went to work. The wound on her back was angry and swollen, red streaks radiating outward like cracks in broken glass. Infection had taken deep root. He cleaned it with carbolic acid while Kaya moaned and thrashed weakly in her delirium. He drained the worst of the pus, packed the wound with clean cloth soaked in the healing solution, and bound it tight. Then he lifted her head and trickled laudanum between her cracked lips. A few drops, enough to ease the fever, to let her body rest and fight. "What is your name?" he asked the girl. "Nina. I am her sister." "Nina, can you ride a horse?" She nodded, jaw trembling, but set with determination. "Your sister needs proper medicine and rest. I'm taking both of you to my ranch. You'll be safe there." "The white people," Nina whispered. "They hate us. They called my sister a witch. They were wrong, and they will answer for it." They sheltered in a hidden cave near a spring-fed creek, 5 miles from Samuel's ranch. The cave was deep and dry, invisible from the main road, a place Samuel had used during the Apache Wars to hide from raiding parties. He built a small fire, kept Kaya warm, changed her bandages every few hours. Through the long night, he watched her breathe, counting each rise and fall of her chest like a miser counting coins. Nina slept curled against her sister's side, exhausted beyond the limits of her young body. Near dawn, Kaya's fever broke. Her eyes fluttered open, clouded with confusion, but alive. truly alive. Where? She croaked. Safe, Samuel said. You're safe. Rest. She tried to sit up, winced, and fell back. My sister. Sleeping. She's fine. Kaya turned her head, saw Nina's small form beside her, and let out a long, shuddering breath. When she looked back at Samuel, there were tears on her cheeks. You came for me. You saved my life. Did you think I'd let you die for it? Most white men would have. Most white men did not care. Samuel had no answer for that, because she was right, and the shame of it burned in his gut like swallowed fire. They rested through the day. Samuel cleaned Kaya's wound again, fed her broth made from dried beef, kept the fire burning low. By evening, color had returned to her face. She could sit up, drink water, speak in full sentences without gasping. And then Samuel told her what he'd discovered: the stolen cattle, Harlan's telegram, the new gunman. Kaya listened without expression. When he finished, she said simply, "They have taken your ranch. Probably. I need to find out for certain. I know that land, every rock, every shadow, every blind spot in the fence line." She met his eyes, and there was iron in her gaze. "I can help you take it back. You can barely stand. Then I will crawl. But I will not hide in this cave while you fight alone." She reached out and gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "You saved me. Now let me help save what is yours." Samuel looked at this woman, this Apache girl, who had been beaten and cast out and left to die because she chose to save a stranger, who was offering to fight beside him before her wounds had even closed. "We wait one more day," he said finally. "You need your strength. Then we move." The moon rose blood red over Red Canyon, painting the desert in shades of rust and shadow. Samuel lay on his belly at the edge of the eastern ridge, studying his ranch through his father's old brass spyglass. Below, lanterns burned in the main house. Armed men patrolled the yard in pairs, rifles cradled in their arms. The bunkhouse was dark and silent, likely locked from the outside. Kaya had drawn him a detailed map from memory, marking guard positions, patrol routes, blind spots in the fence line, the location of the root cellar where the loyal workers were probably being held. 6 guards visible. Harlan made 7. Samuel had 18 pistol rounds, 12 rifle shells, and his father's Bowie knife. Kaya had a pistol taken from the dead rustler Samuel had killed 2 weeks ago. Her hands were steady now. The fever was gone. Her eyes were clear and hard as polished stone. "Eastern hay barn is the weak point," she whispered, pointing. "1 guard, and he's been drinking. I watched him for an hour. He can barely stand." Samuel nodded. "You start a fire on the east side. Draw them out. I go in from the west. Free the workers in the root cellar." "And Harlan?" Samuel's jaw tightened. "Harlan is mine." At midnight, flames erupted from the eastern hay barn. The fire caught fast, hungry and bright, climbing the dry timber walls and leaping toward the black sky. Within minutes, the entire structure was an inferno, throwing heat and light across half the ranch. Shouts rang out. Boots pounded on packed earth. 3 guards ran toward the blaze, silhouettes dancing against the orange glow. Samuel moved through the western shadows like a ghost from the old wars. The guard at the storage shed never heard him coming. Samuel's Bowie knife found the soft space between his ribs, angled upward toward the heart. The man stiffened, gurgled once, and went limp. Samuel lowered the body gently to the ground, wiped his blade on the dead man's shirt, and moved on. 1 down. 6 to go. He reached the root cellar and drew back the heavy iron bolt. The door swung open, releasing a wave of stale air and frightened whispers. Inside, 10 men blinked up at him from the darkness. Miguel, his weathered face streaked with dried blood from a cut above his eye. 3 ranch hands Samuel had known for years. The cook, the stable boy. Workers who had been locked in this hole for 3 days without food or clean water. "Senor Cole," Miguel breathed, "Mother of God, you are alive. Alive and very angry, Samuel pressed a rifle into the old vaquero's trembling hands. "Can you still shoot?" Miguel's spine straightened. His eyes hardened. "I was killing banditos before your father built this ranch. Then let's finish this." The gunfight erupted in the main yard like a thunderstorm breaking. Samuel stepped out of the shadows near the main house and put 2 rounds into a rustler who was running toward the burning barn. The man spun like a top and fell face first into the dust. The others scattered, diving for cover behind water troughs and wagon wheels. Muzzle flashes lit up the night. Bullets whined past Samuel's head, close enough to feel the wind of their passage. He dropped behind a stone well, steadied his breathing, and returned fire. Another rustler crumpled, clutching his throat. Miguel and the freed ranch hands emerged from the darkness on the south side, weapons blazing. The old Mexican fought like a man half his age, moving from cover to cover, picking his shots with the patience of a lifetime. 2 more rustlers fell, then 1 more, and then sudden silence. The crackle of flames, the moaning of wounded men, the hammering of Samuel's heart against his ribs. He rose slowly from behind the well, scanning the yard. Bodies lay sprawled in the churned-up dirt. The hay barn roared and collapsed in on itself, sending a column of sparks spiraling toward the stars. And there, standing on the porch of Samuel's own house, was Harlan Wade. He had Nina. The girl's face was pale with terror, streaked with tears. Harlan's left arm was locked around her throat, holding her small body against his chest like a shield. His right hand pressed a pistol against her temple. "Drop the gun, Cole!" Harlan shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "Drop it, or I scatter this little Apache's brains all over your porch!" Samuel's finger tightened on the trigger, but the angle was impossible. Any shot risked hitting the child. He lowered his Colt and let it fall into the dust. "Kick it away." Samuel kicked the gun toward the porch steps. Harlan laughed, a bitter, broken sound like glass grinding against stone. "You always thought you were better than me, better than everyone, treating those Indians and Mexicans like they were real people, like they deserved respect and dignity." His voice rose to a scream. "The Confederacy should have won, should have burned this whole territory to the ground and started over. Built something pure. Let the girl go, Harlan. This is between us." "No, this is between me and everything you represent. Every lie you ever told yourself about equality and justice." Harlan's grip tightened on Nina, making her whimper. "I'm going to kill this Apache brat. Then I'm going to kill you. Then I'm going to take everything your family built over 3 generations and burn it to ashes. And when I'm done, no one will even remember your name." He was still ranting when the shot rang out from the darkness. Kaya had climbed onto the roof of the horse barn, while Harlan was focused on Samuel, 60 feet away, still weak from her wounds, hands trembling from the effort of the climb. But her aim was true. The bullet punched through Harlan's right shoulder, shattering bone and spinning him sideways. His gun hand flew wide. Nina broke free and ran, screaming, toward the darkness. Samuel moved faster than he had in 13 years. His hand found the backup Derringer in his boot holster, a 2-shot pocket pistol he'd carried since the war. He raised it and fired both barrels into Harlan Wade's chest before the traitor could recover his aim. Harlan stood swaying for a long moment, his mouth working soundlessly, blood spreading across his shirt in a dark tide. Then his legs buckled, and he collapsed backward onto the porch boards. His eyes stared up at the stars. They would never see anything again. Dawn broke soft and golden over Red Canyon Ranch, painting the land in shades of amber and rose. The sheriff arrived with 4 deputies before noon, summoned by a rider Samuel had sent in the night. The surviving rustlers, 3 of them, were shackled hand and foot and loaded into an iron-barred wagon for the long ride to the territorial prison. Harlan's body was wrapped in canvas and hauled away to be buried in an unmarked grave outside town, where the coyotes could sing him to sleep. Samuel stood on the porch of his house, watching the activity in the yard. His chest ached. His hands were steady. The ranch was his again. Kaya approached him slowly, favoring her wounded back, but moving under her own power. Nina walked beside her, holding her sister's hand, no longer trembling. "The doctor came," Kaya said. "He treated my wound properly. He was surprised that you had already done so much." A faint smile touched her lips. "He said your field medicine probably saved my life. We're even then." "No," she shook her head. "We are not even. You saved me twice, in the canyon and in the cave." Samuel reached into his coat and withdrew a folded document, the paper crisp and official. "I want you to stay," he said, "not as a stable hand, not as a servant, as the ranch's medical officer. You saved my life with skills your grandmother taught you. Those skills could save others." He paused. "You'll have a house, a real salary, respect. Your sister can attend the school in town. I'll make sure no one bothers her." Kaya stared at the document for a long moment, emotions flickering across her face like clouds crossing the sun. "Your people will never accept this, an Apache woman giving them orders. My people will accept what I tell them to accept, and anyone who doesn't can find employment elsewhere." Samuel's jaw tightened. "I'm done pretending that the color of someone's skin determines their worth. I should have done more, sooner. I won't make that mistake again." Kaya looked out over the land she had nearly died for, the cattle grazing in the morning light, the workers returning to their tasks, some of them nodding respectfully in her direction. A world that had tried to crush her, now offering her a place to stand. "I will stay," she said finally, "not because I owe you anything, not because you owe me anything, but because this is the first place that has ever seen me as a human being." Samuel nodded once. That was more than enough. 6 months later, Red Canyon Ranch was thriving again. The stolen cattle had been recovered from a box canyon near the Mexican border. New hands had been hired, men who understood that Samuel Cole's word was law, and that law applied equally to every person who worked his land. Kaya ran a small medical station near the main barn, a clean wooden building with real glass windows and a painted sign. She taught the workers how to treat wounds, set broken bones, recognize the signs of heat stroke and snakebite. The ranch hands who had once whispered about Apache witchcraft now came to her with their injuries, their ailments, their trust. Nina attended the schoolhouse in town. She wore new dresses and leather shoes. She was learning to read and write in English and teaching her classmates words in the Apache tongue. No one dared bother the sister of the woman who had saved Samuel Cole's life. One evening, as the sun painted the canyon in shades of copper and blood, old Miguel approached Samuel on the porch. The vaquero's face was troubled, his usual calm replaced by something darker. "Señor," he said quietly, "a rider came through town today, asking questions." Samuel set down his coffee cup. "What kind of questions?" "About you. About the night Harlan Wade died. About how it happened and who was there." Miguel hesitated, his leathery hands twisting the brim of his hat. "He said Harlan was his younger brother. He said he came a long way to find the truth." Samuel's hand drifted to the Colt at his hip, a motion as natural as breathing. "Did he leave a name?" "No, senor. But he said he would return. He said—" Miguel swallowed hard. "He said blood always calls for blood." Samuel nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the last light was bleeding away into darkness. The West was never truly at peace. There was always another threat riding toward you, another debt waiting to be collected, another reckoning hiding in the shadows beyond the firelight. But for now this evening, Red Canyon was home. The land was safe. The people he cared about were protected, and Samuel Cole would defend all of it with every bullet, every blade, every breath left in his body. He turned and walked inside, the door closing behind him with a solid, final sound. Outside, the wind whispered through the canyon, carrying the distant howl of coyotes and the promise of storms yet to come. Somewhere to the south, a lone rider spurred his horse through the darkness, a Winchester rifle across his saddle, and cold vengeance burning in his heart. The debt of blood was far from settled,